So I want to talk a little bit about something that really has a lot of us excited right up the road here at Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. And myself personally, after being in this industry for many years, I'm very excited about. So what it is right now, right here, for all of us in this room, and for all the 6+ billion people around the planet, we've got two competing dilemmas or problems that we're trying to deal with. The first is as old as mankind. It's been around forever. And the second one is about as old as me. The first one is man's innate desire for a better quality of life. Constantly is striving for food, heat, health, education, a constant need. And through the years, it's been realized that in order to get that, we actually need energy. We need energy to do that. And in fact, what's happened then through the years is that as that's increased and the population has increased, the need for energy has continued to increase. Through the ages, it's increased, but as you look at it over just the last few decades and projecting into the future, we see, even with conservation, we're going to need more and more energy. It's going to continue. So how have we been getting energy through the ages? How have we done that? How has man done that? Well, it actually started first thing with discovering fire. That was a good move. Now we needed fuel. So what did we burn? We burned grass, we burned dung, we burned wood, we found charcoal. We discovered oil in the 1920s, great, more concentrated, more and more energy, more and more need, more population. We moved to wind, to solar, and then ultimately to splitting atoms. More concentrated energy, right? Great. What's that given us? Well, energy is that driving force that we need for a better quality of life. That's what it's all about. You have to have energy for all those things that we're striving for. But then the second dilemma, and it's intertwined, and it's on a collision course, really, with this first desire that we've all been striving for. And you guessed it, pollution. Global warming. It's on us right now. I mean, unfortunately, with this striving for more and more energy, we've caused pollution. And for the very thing that we've individually been trying to get, that energy, that quality of life, is the very thing right now that could undermine what we want in that better quality of life, because of the global warming, because of the climate change. So we are on this collision course. And in fact, it was back in 1896 that Arrhenius, a Swedish physical chemist, first talked about this, but it really it took us at least till 1970 or 1980 for scientists to get behind this and really say that this is something that's happening to us. And it took till 2000 for countries to agree that, yeah, I think this really is something that's happening. And it really only took until the last couple of years that the nations have a realization that this is not only upon us, but it's accelerating. The collision course is on us, and we have to limit the future warming by 2 degrees. So this is important. So really what our formula here is clean energy is essential to a good quality of life. That's the important aspect, clean energy. Well, let's go back and look and see, where are we getting our energy right now? Well, right now, across the world, we get energy from these major sources right now. And the first three, the coal and the gas and the oil, which are 70% of our power generation right now, 70%, has huge amount of CO2 gases. And only 30% of our power right now is provided by these clean technologies, green technologies. So we really need to do something. Let's focus, let's figure out right now, what is it? What is that one source of energy that we need to really pursue and get behind here to make sure that we head this off at the pass or minimize the impact? Let's walk through them real quick. Let's talk about solar. Great energy source. A bit expensive, but we have the sun. The only problem is the sun does set. It is intermittent. So there is times that we need a backup power supply. But we need to develop more. And even with all the work that's gone on over the last few decades, the investment and the subsidy, the amount of energy it provides to the world is still very low. Let's look at wind. We see many wind farms popping up around the world. Wind is great. It's very, very clean. But the fact of the matter is it's also intermittent. The wind does not always blow, and not in all locations. Hydroelectric is fantastic, very cheap, very clean, but the reality is it's almost topped out. 16% of our power from hydroelectric right now. We don't have too much further to go in locations. And in fact, it costs a lot. There's a lot of upfront initial investment in order to get a hydroelectric plant and huge swaths of land. But it's important in the mix. Well, finally, let's talk about nuclear. Nuclear is as cheap and as clean as hydroelectric. It has a huge initial investment the way we produce nuclear energy right now. Those big power plants on our grids are very expensive to start. But once up and running, are as inexpensive as hydroelectric is. So a great power source. The situation, though, is that there's a number of perceived issues, obviously, with nuclear. And we've all heard them all the time. And I say perceived because I believe that some is miscommunication on the issues, and some of it is actually that there are technical solutions to some of these problems. Let's walk through them. First, waste. Well, that's interesting. The energy source we use now, 70% of the time, just releases their waste into the atmosphere, hence our global warming. Nuclear, we know exactly where our waste is. We contain it, we store it, and we have ways to deal with that safely. And in fact, a lifetime's worth of energy from a nuclear power plant would only have one soda can full of waste for an individual. I think we can deal with it. The second is radiation. The fact of the matter is, radiation from our nuclear power plants, whether you live right next door or far away, has no impact on your health. It's proven. In fact, what's really interesting, and we study this up the road here at the lab, is the low levels of radiation that the workforce gets that maintains those reactors, that level, is beneficial to their health. That's right, newsflash. But that, I'll do at another TED Talk, because it is pretty interesting. The third issue is safety, and there's no ducking it. We've had our safety issues. But if you compare it to every other energy source has had their safety issues. And when you compare it across the board, we have the best safety performance as well. So you've heard the pros and cons from each of these. Now, which one are we going to pick? Which are we going to vote on to get behind? Which one is it? It isn't one, it's all of them. That is what we have to do. We're running out of time now. The planet is already warming up. It would be great for the next big thing, and we'll continue to look for it. But right now, we need to get behind all of these in order to reduce the 70% on the fossil fuels. Because if we don't, our quality of life is not going to be there. But this is complicated. This is kind of tricky. And where then do you apply these, and where don't you apply them? So I think the better way to actually look at this is to do a bit of a case study, look at a microcosm that's happening. And in Canada right now, in the Canadian Arctic, we have a very unique situation, and it's becoming even more tenuous for the population of people that are up there. There's about 200,000 First Nations people that are spread across a very sparsely populated, obviously, swaths of land up there. 297 communities. 253 of them today rely on diesel power solely. And as you saw from the graph earlier, essentially oil, it has one of the worst CO2 footprints. It has another problem too. It shoots out soot, which even causes more problems on their ice and their snow, which is impacting their quality of life. But even more so, it's impacting how they get their energy, because the fact of the matter is you have to do a lot of transportation in order to get that energy source up there, to get that diesel fuel up there. And right now, they primarily rely upon ice roads. And you've probably seen the show, and they're having lots of problems with ice roads. Why? Because of global warming. They're becoming less reliable. The loads have to be lighter, and they're having a lot of failures. So they then hopefully, if they're near a port, they'll ship it in. But because of the ice flow changes and the global warming going on right now, and the fact of the matter is only 14% of the seaways are charted in those locales, they're having problems there. Ships running aground, spills. Again, they don't have their supply of energy, their quality of life. Not there. Many of the communities now have to rely on airlift to get their diesel in. Can you imagine that? They spend more energy flying the diesel in than the amount of diesel that they get in order to keep their communities going. Huge impact on their quality of life. I think I'd like to show, here's a situation here. Beautiful location, can't believe that view. In this town of Pengnirtung in Nunavut, and back in April of 2015, they experienced a fire that took out their diesel generator set. And this is how fragile their energy supply is. Because of that, this population of 15 people had to gather in the school to stay warm. It took days before they got backup energy so they could stay warm and cook food. Shut down the town, no school, healthcare, jobs. It took a month to be able to fly in backup energy for them. A month. That is not the right quality of life. But they deserve a better quality of life. So let's walk through our options here. One other point. Sorry, I'm going to go back. They deserve a better quality of life, but here's the point. So let's look at each one of their energy sources and what could they use up there besides diesel. Well, first, let's look at wind. Wind is clean, and you don't have to ship it in a truck. It just kind of flies in. But think about it. They call it dead of winter for a reason. There isn't a lot of wind. So that's not going to work. They're going to need diesel backup. Think about solar. Solar's great. It's pretty dark out here already tonight. Can you imagine what December's like in these northern communities? They have 12 minutes of sunshine on a winter's night. That's not going to keep you warm. So you're going to have a backup system. Hydroelectric would be great, but because of the vast distances and the tundra, it is not effective for them to have power transmission lines and enjoy the hydroelectric that is available in some communities, but they can't distribute it. So even if they go to wind and solar, the fact is they'll only be able to reduce their diesel usage by a third. So we don't really have a solution with these. So here's what I want to talk about. It isn't very often that you can see a solution to a problem that you could call it a silver bullet. And I believe that we're in a situation for these northern communities that a very small modular reactor could provide the energy that they need that would be sustainable for these communities going forward. So what is it? Let me talk about it a little bit. Well, first of all, it's based upon the same technology that we have across the world in 450 reactors that we've been operating for decades across the world. It's based on that. But it's not a large reactor that provides power to 500,000 or 1 million people. This is what it says, a very small reactor. About 1% of that power provide energy for 500 to 5,000 people, both electricity and steam for heat. I wonder, is it safe though? Well, in fact, these new designs are inherently safe. In an upset condition, they do not need any operator intervention. They do not need external water or power to maintain safe. Is it cost effective? As we look at the projections right now, it's cheaper than diesel, diesel and solar, or diesel and wind. So yes, cheap power. And think of the logistics. The other word in that title is modular. Think Henry Ford. These reactors will be built in a factory on an assembly line for quality, for cost efficiencies, but then they're put on a truck and transported, assembled, and used for 15 to 20 years. They're fueled ahead of time. No more logistics headaches, waiting for shipments of oil for diesel to come in to heat the community. After those 15 to 20 years, returned, refurbished, reloaded, back out again. Clean, yes. No emissions, zero. Clean energy for a better quality of life. So why don't we have them now? I've been asked this before, because there's a buzz around this right now. Scientific communities, government communities, why don't we have them? Where are they? Well, in fact, 30 years ago, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, along with some other laboratories, designed a prototype and proved it in principle. But because of cheap, dirty energy for many years, we just continued. And we didn't see that collision course that was happening with the fossil fuels. We didn't realize how dire it was until just recently. So what's interesting is the time is now. And in fact, there's many countries out there currently right now. Russia, China, United States, United Kingdom are all looking at this and racing to bring small modular reactors online for their remote communities, as well as for export to help remote communities around the world. But what I find interesting is the situation that we have right here in Canada. And it is really unique at this moment. And let me explain why. First of all, I've had the opportunity to work for 40 years in the nuclear industry around the world. In fact, I worked in 3 Tier 1 countries, United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. And I've worked alongside the committed, the caring, and the technically competent people in that industry. And I've seen different circumstances with government, where government is going, where the communities are, and what the needs are. And right here in Canada now, we're aligned in a way that is unique compared to any of those other countries. And why is that? Well, first you heard the need. We have a critical need, and we don't have another solution at hand. And they deserve a better quality of life. But the second point is, if you listen to the federal mandates right now that government is talking about, we align. Better quality of life for First Nations. Lowering the greenhouse gases in Canada as well as around the world. Innovation, we heard that earlier today. Innovation, to put Canada in the front. Infrastructure, we need to renew the infrastructure. So we have alignment there. You look at the provincial governments. Each of them right now have huge resources that they would like to pull out for prosperity, and they have needs. But the number one source that they don't have in order to make that happen is energy, a good source of clean energy to make that happen. We have it. And then you look further behind that. You look at the Canadian nuclear utility industry here. A safety record second to none. You look at the supply chain that support them. They've been doing it for decades, and they stand ready to support an initiative like this. You look at the regulatory regime, the envy of the world, safe, competent. And then you look up the road here at Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, And they have a history there of bringing prototypes to life that they've been doing now for almost 50 years. So, what I see in the very near future is I see an opportunity for prototypes placed at some of the Canadian nuclear laboratory sites, working through the issues, working with the communities to answer their questions, working with the regulators, proving it. I see a factory built. I see reactors being used in these northern communities as well as exported around the world. So I see prosperity for Canada and our helping the global issue that we have right now with global warming. Thank you very much.